This is the Deservability Treatment by Louise Hay. I am deserving. I deserve all good. Not some, not a little, but all good. I now move past all negative, restricting thoughts. I release and let go of the limitations of my parents. I love them and I go beyond them. I am not their negative opinions nor their limiting beliefs. I am not bound by any of the fears or prejudices of this current society I live in. I no longer identify with limitation of any kind. In my mind, I have total freedom. I now move into a space of consciousness where I am willing to see myself differently. I am willing to create new thoughts about myself and about my life. My new thinking becomes new experiences. I now know and affirm that I am at one with the prospering powers of the universe. As such, I now prosper in a number of ways. The totality of possibilities lies before me. I deserve life, a good life. I deserve love, an abundance of love. I deserve good health. I deserve joy and happiness. I deserve freedom to be all that I can be. I deserve more than that. I deserve all good. The universe is more than willing to manifest my new beliefs. And I accept this abundant life with joy, pleasure, and gratitude. For I am deserving. I accept it, and I know it to be true. Hello there, welcome friends. I'm so glad you're taking in this Deservability Treatment video. Whether this is your first time or you've done this 1,000 times, I wanted to put together 5 questions for helping you to debrief this experience. Ideally, this is something that you would do every day for a while until it really clicks in your brain, into your subconscious, that you are actually inherently worthy and deserving of every single thing that you could ever want, and that the only thing that keeps us from being where we want to be are the other stories that we've learned, that we've picked up along our trail, that we tell ourselves about why it can't happen for us, about why we don't deserve it. And those are just stories, and this is a new one. So the first question for debriefing this experience is, how did it make you feel? And really, with any of these questions, I would recommend journaling for any of them that move for you. And what that means is, if I say something like, how did it make you feel? And you go, I have no idea. That doesn't move. There's no answer that pops out, that just jumps out easily. That's what we're looking for. So these are just ideas. You don't have to answer them all. But the first question is, how did it make you feel? And the second question is, were some parts of it harder than others to get through, to say out loud? Again, just a thought for self-reflection. The third question works especially well if you have been doing this for a while, because over time, the answer to how much did you believe hopefully will be going up. The fourth question, did a different voice in your head respond and counter and provide explanation, probably even, as to why what the deservability treatment said was wrong? AKA, in Abraham language, did you argue for your limitations in any kind of reflexive way? That's not to say that that's a bad thing. This is just to help us have awareness of, what did it say? What did it say? Because chances are what it said, that's the story that you're telling that's holding you back. That's the story that you're trying to uninstall while you're trying to install the deserving story and make that your dominant mode of seeing the world. And the last question is, did this bring up any distant memories that you haven't thought of in a long time? So when we are feeding ourselves a new story, and then we feel our old story kind of having a spotlight shined on it because we're trying to move over here so we see better where we are, so to speak. It can also, like, in terms of seeing better where we are, that can include, how did we get here? How did we get to where we are? Because it's totally normal, for lots of reasons in today's society especially, for us to wind up as adults who don't feel deserving. We feel like we have to prove our value, prove our worthiness, and that's just simply not true, right? Like, as far as a spiritual perspective, source energy perspective, we are all worthy and deserving of love and belonging simply because we're alive. So there's nothing to earn, there's nothing to prove, but sometimes we carry stories that sound like that. And those are things that were taught to us a long time ago, back in childhood, from our parents. Maybe they were even well-meaning at the time, but those stories, maybe they don't serve us. Maybe they're doing what we're talking about here. They're standing in our way. They're telling us that we don't deserve something that we want, and so why even try? And, yeah, you may not get there, but at least if you try, you know what happened. So those are 5 questions to hopefully help debrief the experience of reciting the deservability treatment, whether you use the video that we just went through and, once a day you're doing the listen and repeat version, or if you go to the blog link in the description, there's a printed copy where you can print that out and have it there and just read it to yourself. Ideally, looking at yourself in the mirror is another component to this that can just make it that much more powerful. Just for a little bit of background, as far as I'm concerned, I was first handed this deservability treatment almost 6 years ago, and combined with finding Abraham Hicks right around the same time. Abraham's a teacher of law of attraction and really universal laws in general, how our energy works, how our emotions work, all that good stuff. So I found that at the same time, within one day of being handed the deservability treatment. I feel like when we're ready to change our lives, it's all right there. The quote of, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So, there's a certain readiness on our part that has to happen first, and readiness, even the smile on my face right now, may lead you to feel like, oh, that's some kind of like decision, like positive decision, like, oh, I'm ready to change my life. Look at me, good for me. Nope, mine came out of a really dark depression of like suffering, emotional suffering, because my life was not what I wanted it to be. There was something that like deep down knew that my life should be better than this, that like I've achieved every goal I've ever set for myself. That's not to brag, that's to say like, how the fuck am I still miserable if I'm over here like all successful? and whatnot. That was very disillusioning for me, was to like be so successful and still be miserable. And that is where I took this turn into understanding, like, where does feeling good actually come from? And it really does come out of what story are you telling in your mind? Not even the words that are coming out of your mouth. What do your thoughts sound like? Because, and again, we go back to one of those debrief questions, number 4, did a different voice in your head respond and counter the deservability treatment, basically disagree with what the deservability treatment was trying to say about you? Was there another version of you that was having a differing opinion? Because that version of you is telling you their story all the time, and you're listening. And so this deservability treatment is one tool. Affirmations in general is kind of the broad umbrella that this deservability treatment would fall under. But basically what it's doing is it's practicing this other way of seeing yourself. And over time, the more you're able to believe it, the more you work with it, the more your mind will find examples and proof and evidence to support this new thing that you're practicing. So every day when you do it, you know, let's say you do it in the morning and then later in the afternoon, you're randomly in a meeting somewhere and you notice like, wow, that worked out really good for me. Maybe I really am hooked into the prospering powers of the universe. And you gotta laugh because like, what a fucking ridiculous thought. Obviously I'm not, this is day 1. But the next day when you read, I am connected to the prospering powers of the universe, you're like, well, things did work out pretty good for me yesterday in that meeting. Maybe it's not as far out of bounds as I thought it was. And now look what just happened. Instead of your default response, who was arguing with you on day 1, maybe even by day 2, you're having a memory from yesterday where maybe you did see some evidence that contradicts, and now instead of telling your old story, you're thinking about maybe this other story is actually valid. And bam, like even in just one day, with like one instance, one new memory, one new piece of evidence, you've opened the doorway to like what this tool's power really holds, which is if you do this for 30, 40, 50 days, like you will have a totally different perspective of yourself. You can retrain the filter in your mind through which you see yourself in as little as a couple of months. And it costs you 5 minutes per day. Not 1 single cent. I'm giving you this video for free. I had to see a therapist to get handed the deservability treatment, but I mean, I was paying her for an hour of her time and she gave me this tool that I spent hours with over the course of a couple months. And I credit this and Abraham Hicks with literally changing my life 6 years ago. If you want just a little bit more detailed version of my personal story, the blog post goes through a very detailed account of what it was like emotionally to work with this tool the very first time. It brought up a lot. When I write these debrief questions, it's very much based on how much this deservability treatment brought up in me the very first time I read it out loud. And reading it out loud, saying the words out loud is a very important piece. I can't stress it enough that like just reading it or just listening to it in your mind is not the same thing as like saying it out loud. There's real progress that manifests when you say it out loud. Like our voice, our throat is the manifestation center of our energy body. So when you move energy through your throat, you speak it out loud, the universe moves in response to what you're doing. So the universe will begin providing evidence of your deservability that now through the deservability treatment you're going to focus on for a few minutes a day. And then the universe is providing evidence. And with that evidence, now tomorrow when you read the deservability treatment again, you now have a little bit of evidence. And that makes your belief a little stronger. And so now you have a stronger belief. Now the universe is responding even louder. So now you have more evidence that manifests on day 2. You take that into day 3. Now your belief is even stronger and the evidence is even more. And on and on and on. I didn't see my job improve or my relationship improve. I saw my whole fucking life change. Like the whole world treated me differently after I started treating myself differently. And that's the simple truth. It doesn't cost anything except for our willingness to think differently about ourselves and our lives and the world that we live in. This world is a beautiful place. This earth is a realm where we are able to have much pleasure and much expansion and learning and joy and curiosity and innovation and invention and on and on and on with the deliciousness of being physical. And if we don't see the world like that, if we see the world like it's a scary place, it's a mean place, that's our filter. And when we go out in the world, people are mean to us, they scare us. That was my experience. That was how I thought of the world, that's how they treated me. And now, everywhere I look, even in moments of lower, maybe even depressed energy, my vantage point of myself is so very different. In terms of, I found that this deservability treatment was a doorway into self-love, which I think self-love is something that gets thrown around and talked about a lot. And it's like, yeah, but practically how? How do you actually do that? And this tiny action of giving yourself these 5 minutes to look yourself in the mirror and say these words to yourself, Abraham says to look in the mirror and see if you can see source shining back at you from your eyes. And I tell you what, after a few weeks of you working with this deservability treatment and you're actually believing it, a good big chunk of it, and now you're smiling because it feels so good to remind yourself of just how deserving you really are. When you smile like that, you will see source shining back at you from your eyes. Oh, dear friends, I hope this helps. I would absolutely love to hear your experience with the deservability treatment, the answers to the debrief questions, other debrief questions that you think would be really cool for other people to borrow and play with. Yeah, let me know in the comments. And until next time, I will be seeing you, but you take good care, and so will I.